Well, hello and welcome. I'm Chef D. Brandon Walker. I'm the executive chef here at St. Joseph Center and Commis Customized Catering. I'm also Chop Champion from Food Network. And I'm here with Class 46 at the St. Joseph Center Culinary Training Institute. And today we are going to talk about beef. So what determines whether something is prime, choice, or select? The way that these are determined is basically by the meat's palatability. How easy it is to eat the meat, like how supple it is to the mouth. And that is determined mostly by the level of intramuscular fat. The intramuscular fat is also known as marbling. And this is actually something that beef inspectors will look at and grade. That's what makes the meat so tender, is that great amount of marbling that we find in the interior of the muscle. So why is it so that certain parts of the cow are more palatable than others? Let's take America's most popular steak, for example, which is the porterhouse. And on one side, you're getting the filet, and then on this side, you're getting the New York strip. This area here in the mid-back is known as the short loin, and this is where the porterhouse steak is found. So you can see here, this being the filet would run this way underneath the ribs. I would liken it to your spinae erectus, which are the two big muscles that get tired when you've been in the kitchen all day. Right? Now, our meat wouldn't be, I'm talking about human meat now, wouldn't be as palatable because we're standing on 2 feet all the time. We're actually doing this balancing act when we're like, trying to keep ourselves up fighting against gravity. But imagine if we were on all fours. Then our back would relax, of course, right? And so when you look at the cow, you've got these big, powerful forelegs, and you've got these big, powerful hips or rounds in the back. And this is what's supporting most of the weight here. And then the back actually sags here in the middle because they stand on all four and they basically graze all day. And that's why these muscles here in the mid-back area aren't used as much. And because they're not used as much, they develop fat. Now, these ones that work more are constantly tearing themselves down and repairing and becoming more dense. And that's basically, in a nutshell, why you'll find, say, like top round being much more dense with less intramuscular fat than we find in the mid-back region where most of the prime cuts of meat come from. Let's talk about the temperatures for beef. You've got 110 to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. This is internal temperature. And this is rare. And then you've got 120 to about 130, and this would be considered medium rare. 130 to 140 is considered medium. Anything over 140 plus, that's well done. Here's a trick. I want you to take your hand, all right? Take your left hand and take your right finger and come over and touch the muscle on your thumb on the opposite hand. Okay, so if you feel that, there's a good amount of bounce, nice and soft, kind of squishy. And then what we're going to do is I want you to keep that finger there as you move the thumb over and make contact with the index finger. Okay? And you don't have to press really hard, just about 50% pressure. All right, just make contact with it. Now, you'll feel that it firmed up. The amount of bounce there in your thumb muscle is very much like the amount of bounce that we would find if we cooked a steak to about 115 degrees or rare. I want you to leave your finger there and then continue to move it on over to the middle finger. And you feel that? You feel how that tightened up there? Okay, so the amount of bounce there is like what we would find if we cooked it to about 125 degrees, which is your classic medium rare. Right? And that's where most chefs would advise you to cook it to. Then I want you to leave it here and then go all the way over, make the stretch to the ring finger, and you'll feel that it's really tightened up. It's pretty dramatic. And that's what happens to the meat when we go to about 135 degrees, or classically medium, where a lot of people like it. So this is a very useful one as well. And then if you go all the way over, stretch to the pinky, you'll feel that it gets like rock hard. And that's 140 plus degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature for a steak. And that is what a piece of meat that has been cooked well done is going to feel like. Right? So, you can practice this. You can reference this anytime that you're cooking a steak and you're not quite sure. Keep in mind that there is something called carryover cooking, meaning that if you want the steak to come out medium rare, which is back here on the middle finger, you want to make sure that you take it off when it feels like this. So you want to take it off one step ahead, because by the time it rests properly for 5 to 7 minutes, the internal temperature is going to continue to rise. So you want to take it off a little bit softer than where you want it, and then it's going to rest out just perfect. But yeah, great tip, great trick. Welcome back to the Culinary Institute here at St. Joseph Center in Venice Beach, California. We are going to do 2 different techniques to cook a perfect steak. We are going to do pan searing, butter based, which is an old traditional French, really fancy technique that produces a absolutely delicious and well-colored steak. And then we're also going to do some diamond marks on the grill and go ahead and finish that steak on the grill. In front of me, I have this unbelievably beautiful piece of meat that has been donated to us by the good folks at Lone Mountain Ranch. We are so pleased to have their support, and this absolutely just looks absolutely fabulous. This is a ribeye. This is a ribeye roast. So this would be like a standing roast, and we could cook this whole, which would be a great thing as well, but we're going to fabricate this down into steaks. So you can imagine this piece goes on for about, the primal cut goes about this long, and then you've got indentations usually where the ribs have been. And so this has been basically taken off of the rib section. You'll see the intense amount of marbling here in this prime grade of meat. This has been pretty well cleaned, so there's not too much more for me to clean here. Go ahead and cut the steak, 1.5 inch. And again, look at that. So all of this, that's why this is a prime piece of meat. You see that? So what happens is that when this hits the pan, this fat is going to melt and it's actually going to lubricate this piece of meat, as well as when you bite into it, you're going to have all this luscious fat in every bite. Okay. So next step, we're going to season the meat, and we're going to prepare our pan. We want the pan to be hot. So I'm going to turn the fire on my, my cast iron here. And I'm going to use really simple seasonings. Kosher salt and some fresh cracked peppercorn. I like to break my own. Just throw down about a tablespoon of whole peppercorn and then take the pan. So, and then look at that. And nothing like fresh cracked peppercorn. And then you're going to liberally salt. Again, this is a pretty thick piece of meat, so don't be shy with the kosher salt. Just kind of press that in, flip it over, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. I've got a very hot cast iron pan here. It's really, typically in most cows, you'll find, from 3 to 5% prime meat. With Wagyu, because of the disposition of the animal, and all these animals are certified and genetically tested to be, in fact, Wagyu cows, actually the yield is anywhere from 50 to 90% prime meat. So I think there's only 7 or 8 ranches in the country that are producing this quality Wagyu, full-blood American beef. Again, really pleased to be cooking this steak. Again, super hot pan here. we're just going to go down with a little bit of vegetable oil, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan. Not too much, and you'll see that the pan is hot enough to cause the fat to smoke immediately, and that's okay. Now, presentation side down, really important when cooking proteins. Whichever side that you like or you fancy, that should be the side that's going to make contact with the pan first, because that's the side that's going to get the best color and the best sear and the best texture. We'll lay it down away from yourself so that you're not going to splash hot fat back on yourself. And you hear that? That's the sound that you should hear when you're cooking a steak. When proteins go down, don't move it. Resist the temptation to immediately start to fiddle with the meat. Just let it set up and do its thing. Okay? Wow, that smells amazing. That fat is already starting to melt into the pan. We're already starting to get some of those Maillard reactions on the surface of the meat. So Maillard reaction is the browning that creates the new flavor molecules. It's any time that you have the presence of protein and carbohydrates in an environment where the water is all gone, so it's all evaporated off, and you've got temperatures in excess of 140 degrees Celsius, or about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's what's happening here. So, how do I check to see my color? Well, you want to take your tongs and just peek. Okay, just peek. Don't move it. Just peek around the edges, all right? That's great. We're going to give it about 30 more seconds on this side. Now, I said I was going to pan sear it and then butter baste it. So right now we're using direct heat or conduction, adjacent molecules, one next to the other, transferring thermal energy. We're going to finish it in a much gentler way using convection in the oven. And that's really the best combination. So I'm happy with the sear that I have on it now. I have some half-ounce pieces of whole butter on the ready, and I also have prepared a small bouquet of thyme. I'm going to go ahead and flip the steak over now. Wow, look at that. See? Wasn't that worth the wait? At this point, I'm going to tip my pan about 45 degrees so that I'm still keeping it over the heat. And I'm going to start to drop in about a total of a tablespoon of butter. To this, I'm going to add the bouquet. So you can see, I'm still over the heat, but now I'm angled so that the butter will collect down in the bottom of the pan. It's also being flavored by that bouquet of fresh thyme. I'm going to take my spoon, and I'm going to start to baste the meat. Of course, the proteins in the butter are browning. This is making a delicious brown butter. This is developing color and texture and a wonderful flavor, helped along by that bouquet of fresh thyme. And this takes a little practice, but you'll get it. And you can see the color developing on this steak. It's already got that beautiful caramelized color, and I'm happy with that. So at this point, I'm going to check my doneness. Right now, I'm at about rare, about 100, and I'd say about 110 degrees based on the way that it feels. So I'm going to pop it in the oven for about a minute, 2 minutes to let it kind of relax. And gently finish to a perfect 125 degrees for medium rare. So our ribeye is out of the oven, and it is out of the pan in which we seared it in. And that's really important. Make sure that you don't attempt to rest your meat in the pan that you cooked it in, because there's residual heat that will continue to cook the steak. It's called carryover cooking. So you want to get it out of the heat and place it on the plate. basically, the thermal energy has caused the proteins inside the meat to denature or stretch out. And then they cross one another and they form these cross links. And the more heat, the more the cross links form and the shorter the distance becomes. And they squeeze the liquid, the blood, the water, out toward the outsides of the piece of meat. Allowing it to rest allows those liquids to redistribute themselves throughout the meat. So now the meat is off the heat, and now those protein bonds are starting to relax, and it gives an opportunity for the liquids to kind of creep and crawl their way and redistribute themselves throughout the piece of meat, ensuring that you're going to have a juicy piece of meat. If we were to go ahead and cut it right now, of course, it would bleed out all over the plate, and that's not something that we want because we want those juices inside. Optimal amount of time for a steak to rest is 5 to 7 minutes. 10 is fine, 5 is okay in a pinch, but I would say 7 minutes is perfect. Okay, the steak has come off the grill and has now properly rested. And what we're going to do now is slice just so that you can see what a really good medium rare looks like here. And again, when you're dealing with meat of this quality, you really don't want to cook it beyond this. And you see how I'm cutting it across the grain. And I'll show you what medium rare looks like here. I'll use my knife as a pointer. Here you'll see that we have the beautiful Maillard reaction, the browning, the texture on the outside, the grill marks. And then beyond that, you'll see a slight, maybe 1/8 of an inch strip of gray meat. Right? So this is meat that we had to sacrifice just to get the internal temperature up. And then you'll see that it migrates down to kind of a pink color here in this range of about 1/4 of an inch deep. And then that same succession starts on the other side, of course. But here in the middle, you'll see that it's almost like a, not quite raw, but a darker red color. And you'll see that it is extremely juicy. You'll see that it glistens when you cut it. It should be completely glistening. It should not be dry or stressed in any way. Okay. Now, I understand that some people, prefer medium, and that's fine. Just leave it on the grill for about another 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. But again, when you're dealing with this full-blood American Wagyu, I think this is the way to go. And then when you slice, again, you want to have a very sharp knife, and you want to cut on this diagonal on the ribeye so that we're going across the grain. Let's check the tensile strength of this. Look at that. Look how easily that pulls apart because we're going across the grain. So we wouldn't want to cut lengthwise on the steak, we want to cut across. Okay? That's going to make it even more palatable. That's just beautiful. Well seasoned, nice vein of fat that runs through the ribeye. All that flavor. Lovely. Okay, and then we could do a whole plate up with the one that we did with the pan sear. It's been resting for quite a while now. But what I did was I put together a little reduction, and this is so easy to do. You can do it with balsamic vinegar, you can do it with red wine. What I did was a combination of red wine vinegar, red wine, and a little bit of agave. And then I just swirled in a pat of butter at the end to just to give it some richness. And I've got that pan reduction right here. Look at that beautiful color. I'll just nappe the plate. This is dynamite and really easy to do. And as far as the wine, you should reduce the wine that you're going to be drinking that night. That would be a really good rule of thumb to follow. And then we can just garnish that beautiful steak with a little bit of the thyme that we used in the butter baste and a little bit of fresh parsley. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us here at our kitchen at the St. Joseph Center Culinary Institute in Venice Beach, California. And again, a big thank you to Lone Mountain Ranch for donating this beautiful full-blood American Wagyu. I hope that you've learned a little bit about fabricating and cooking in either the butter-based or on the grill. Remember, allow your steaks to rest, and try a little wine reduction for a beautiful presentation and a little extra flavor. Thanks so much. I'm Chef D. Brandon Walker. Thank you. Here's a trick. I want you to take your hand, all right? Take your left hand and take your right finger and come over and touch the muscle on your thumb on the opposite hand. Okay, so if you feel that, there's a good amount of bounce, nice and soft, kind of squishy. And then what we're going to do is I want you to keep that finger there as you move the thumb over and make contact with the index finger. Okay? And you don't have to press really hard, just about 50% pressure. All right, just make contact with it. Yeah, you'll feel that it firmed up. The amount of bounce there in your thumb muscle is very much like the amount of bounce that we would find if we cooked a steak to about 115 degrees or rare. I want you to leave your finger there and then continue to move it on over to the middle finger. And you feel that? You feel how that tightened up there? Okay, so the amount of bounce there is like what we would find if we cooked it to about 125 degrees, which is your classic medium rare. Right? And that's where most chefs would advise you to cook it to. Then I want you to leave it here and then go all the way over, make the stretch to the ring finger, and you'll feel that it's really tightened up. Pretty dramatic. And that's what happens to the meat when we go to about 135 degrees, or classically medium, where a lot of people like it. So this is a very useful one as well. And then if you go all the way over, stretch to the pinky, you'll feel that it gets like rock hard. And that's 140 plus degrees Fahrenheit internal temperature for a steak. And that is what a piece of meat that has been cooked well done is going to feel like. Right? So, you can practice this. You can reference this anytime that you're cooking a steak and you're not quite sure. Keep in mind that there is something called carryover cooking, meaning that if you want the steak to come out medium rare, which is back here on the middle finger, you want to make sure that you take it off when it feels like this. So you want to take it off one step ahead, because by the time it rests properly for 5 to 7 minutes, the internal temperature is going to continue to rise. So you want to take it off a little bit softer than where you want it, and then it's going to rest out just perfect. But yeah, great tip, great trick.